I think that most atheists have at some point come across the accusation from theists that atheism is just another religion. And I was asked a short time ago why it is that I appear to be so angry about something that I don't believe in and should, logically consider to be unimportant. It wasn't actually asked to me as a question, it was more of an observation that somebody made. But I think there was an implied question there, and it did make me think. I don't believe in God and I don't believe in religion, and yet I feel quite passionately about this subject. So why is that? Is it possible that atheism is my pseudo-religion after all? The conclusion that I came to is that I feel so strongly against religion simply because of the way that it conflicts with my personal beliefs and the way that it seeks to constrain my freedom. I'd say that politically I'm probably a liberal, although I wouldn't consider myself to be a libertarian by any means. What I do believe in, though, is some basic freedoms for people to just get on with their lives, unmolested, as long as they don't harm anybody else. And therein lies my problem with religion, because there seems to be plenty of theists who don't feel the same way. I'm not going to advocate that we ban religion or that we should discriminate against people with religious beliefs, because I do believe in fairness, I do believe in freedom. But by the same token, I don't think that holding a religious belief should entitle somebody to special rights or special consideration. So, for example, I don't think that knowledge passed between a priest and a criminal in confession should enjoy any kind of special protection from disclosure, unless that priest is acting as the criminal's lawyer at that point. I don't see why a Catholic priest who gains knowledge of a past or future criminal act shouldn't be held as accountable for not reporting that knowledge to the authorities as any other citizen. That they get this special protection is obscene. So what is it that I hate about religion so much? I think the answer is really quite simple. Generally speaking, I'm fairly content to live and let live. But as I said, many theists don't seem to share that viewpoint. Now, our society, the society I live in, has example after example where religious belief is given some kind of special priority. We have blasphemy laws in the UK to prosecute us for speaking ill of this non-existent God. And although they're rarely used, they are part of the statutes, they're part of the legal machine. Then we have people like Baroness Young, who campaigned tirelessly against the equal age of consent for gay people and against the rights of gay people to adopt children or to have our relationships legally recognised as the equivalent to heterosexual marriage. Now, if people want to have their belief in God, then that has got to be their right. However, their belief should not be allowed to affect me and other people who don't share it. And I think that religion should definitely not be allowed to control the knowledge that's made available to children in schools. So Catholics who ban the teaching of contraception in schools, Christians who teach abstinence, they bear some of the responsibility for young girls not having access to decent sex education or contraceptives and consequently falling pregnant. And the argument that these kids are responsible for getting pregnant because they're the ones who had sex is laughable. If they were having safe sex, the likelihood of them falling pregnant drops to virtually nothing. So how does this affect me? Well, I live in a country that has a fairly comprehensive welfare state system. And this means that I end up paying for the keep of any schoolgirl who ends up pregnant and her child. That's how it impacts me. If you take the example of young gay men who are denied access to education about gay sex in schools, if they're denied access to information about the risks of unsafe gay sex, as was recently the case until Section 28 was repealed in the UK, then unsurprisingly they are more likely to have unsafe sex. And if they then subsequently contract HIV, it's down to taxpayers like me to foot the bill for their treatment. And I'm not advocating that we shouldn't treat people with serious medical conditions. I'm advocating that prevention is better than cure. And actually, in the case of HIV, it isn't cure. All it is ongoing management of the condition. And this might sound like I'm just boiling it down to how much it's costing me, but think about the practical considerations here. All of that money that's being allocated to address issues that are so easily prevented in the first place could be directed to something that's so much more constructive and worthwhile. We could put it towards improving our education system, more police, better hospitals, more money for the health service, more money for the arts, more money for overseas aid. You know, the list is endless. And putting aside the economic argument, there's still other social considerations as well. In the UK, for example, we have same-sex civil partnerships, but not gay marriage. And that is solely down to religious pressure. When gay activists say that civil partnerships aren't enough and that we should have marriage, the religious types just come back saying, well, see, they're never happy. We'll be happy when we get the equality that religious people would like to continue denying us. If a gay civil partnership is the equivalent of a heterosexual marriage, why not call it marriage? For the simple reason that there are people out there, religious and social conservatives, who don't want it called marriage. Different but equal is not true equality. If you have two supposedly equal systems in place, one of them is always going to be regarded as inferior to the other. And reclassifying civil partnerships as marriage will close out that loophole. And after all, if civil partnerships and marriage are legally indistinguishable, then the only reason for differentiating between them is bigotry. Wanda Sykes put it really succinctly when she said, if you don't agree with same-sex marriage, then don't marry somebody of the same sex. Until recently, when the Goods and Services Act was passed in the UK, it was legal to discriminate against gay people by refusing them services or goods. So you could refuse to let them stay in your hotel, you could refuse to serve them in a restaurant. The Salvation Army famously would not help people who were openly gay. Now, these religious organisations wanted special exemption, which fortunately they didn't get, but they still felt they were entitled to it, and they're still moaning about it. On the 7th of July 2005, the 4 young Muslim men detonated bombs in the London transport system. And one of the people who was killed on the number 30 bus worked in the same company as me, in the same building. So we now have our civil liberties being taken away one stealthy step at a time, all in the name of protecting us against terrorism. And although these bombings may have had socio-political drivers, it's self-evident that religious fundamentalist belief in martyrdom enabled these men to be manipulated into performing these terrorist acts. So that's why I'm angry with religion. Not all religious people, just those who feel they have the right to try and actively prevent me from living my life in a way that makes me feel fulfilled. Those that want to impose their belief system on me. I'm angry with people who think that it's okay to enforce their views on others and expect me to pick up the pieces and foot the bill. I'm angry with people who think that their unshared belief in magic should somehow give them special rights over me or make them more deserving of respect or consideration than their actions. And I'm angry because really all that I want is a quiet life. And I lay the blame for that anger squarely at the door of those religious activists, because they've got no right to expect me to abide by their religious beliefs or even to respect them. It's justifiable anger. In fact, I wouldn't actually have anything to be angry about if these people had the decency to keep their Bronze Age superstitions to themselves and just fuck off and leave me alone.